Are you doing the right type of training to improve your strength, power, and speed as you age? Men need to train differently than women. So let's talk about how to improve your performance in life as you age.
Welcome to the Low Carb Athlete Podcast, where we focus on discussing topics to help you burn fat, optimize health, and improve performance in life and sports. Transform the whole you from the inside out with the WHOLESTIC METHOD. Let's dive in. Here's your host, Debbie Potts.
Hello, my favorite low-carb aging athletes. I just wanted to share with you a special coupon code that I have from one of my favorite supplements, BioOptimizers. BioOptimizers has some great products that I often recommend to my health coaching clients based on their nutritional therapy analysis and their functional labs and food log symptoms that we look at. And a few of those are from BioOptimizers called HCL Breakthrough, Gluten Guardian, Magnesium Breakthrough, Capex, and their Masszymes enzymes, which is the strongest enzyme formula ever. And it has 5 different kinds of protease. Often we don't digest our food properly. So we are what we eat, but we also are what we can properly break down and absorb. So learn more from BioOptimizers. Check out their website and use our code LowCarbAthlete next time you go to purchase something. Enjoy!
Just to let you know, I will add more details on some information I just heard from Dr. Stacy Sims on the difference of Zone 2 training for men versus women. I will save it for the end of the podcast if you don't want to listen to me talk more about how women are not small men and how we need to change how we fuel and train, as well as how men need to change how they train. They need more Zone 2. Women, we need more sprint training, if you want to know the short answer. So stay tuned and listen to the end of the podcast if you want to learn more of recent information that she posted, and also did some interviews with Mind Body Green that I would suggest listening to. So let's continue on to muscle health and metabolic health, and then read the rest in my blog post, because I added 10 different ways to get 40 to 50 grams of protein with the right amount of leucine per serving. And I listed, let's see, there's 8 items. And then if you just do seafood, you don't like animal meat, you don't like steak, you can get it from seafood, and you can get like 10 ounces. I think summary is 8 to 10 ounces, not the little 5-6 ounces, not 1-2 eggs. So go to my blog page to read the rest, and stay through the end of the podcast today to listen to a summary of notes I typed up from a recent interview with Dr. Stacy Sims on Zone 2 training for women. Before we go into some information about metabolic health and muscle health, and then at the finish of the podcast, I'll talk about Dr. Stacy Sims' information, I wanted to go over a few things. So everything's on my blog, but how GLUT4 works, super interesting. And then I talked about different protein, but Dr. Stacy Sims' information on men and women, the differences in how we should train. Summary: women, we have more slow twitch muscle fibers. Men already have more fast twitch. So think about what we should do differently as women as we age if we already are slow. So Zone 2 for women, I talked about the very finish. Now, before we go into some definitions, lactate and MCT1, not MCT oil, but MCT1. So first of all, lactate. It is a fuel that we don't always talk about. So it's a fuel primarily used during moderate to high intensity exercise. The misconception that lactate causes muscle fatigue and soreness has largely been debunked. And my mentor, Dr. Cumberbatch, we talked about this in a recent podcast. Lactic acid is not what causes muscle fatigue. Lactate is a valuable energy source that can be utilized by muscles, especially during periods of increased energy demand. So lactate is a fuel source. During low intensity exercise, when the body relies on aerobic metabolism, this is where oxygen is readily available to produce energy, ATP. As the exercise intensity increases, there comes a point in where the demand for energy surpasses the capacity of aerobic metabolism alone. And this is what I see when I'm doing the PNOE metabolic exercise test, the active test. This is where we see the body shifting from, well, we don't even call it anaerobic and anaerobic metabolism. We're looking at the different fuel sources used in various zones. So listen to my other podcasts on how I determine your zones when I do your metabolic test analysis. Zone 1, zone 2 is going to be your fat max. So that's zone 2 where you're burning the most fat. And then when we hit the bottom of zone 3 into zone 3, it's where you're switching fuel sources from fat to more lactate and what we used to say is anaerobic metabolism. So lactate is a byproduct when we get into zone 3, zone 4, and zone 5. Contrary to the belief that lactate is a waste product, it is actually used as fuel by various tissues, as the muscles, heart, and the brain during and after exercise. Isn't this so interesting, fascinating? I think I just found this out. We never really talk about lactate. So I dove into it because as I do metabolic testing, this is what we learn in the metabolic expert course is the fuel source lactate, but I never hear about it in social media. Lactate shuttle hypothesis. This proposes that lactate produced in one cell or tissue can be transported to another cell or tissue to serve as a substrate for energy production. The threshold at which lactate begins to accumulate in the blood is often referred to as lactate threshold or anaerobic threshold. Beyond this point, so zone 3 and above, there's an increased production of lactate and the body's ability to clear it may become challenged. This is what we want to work on. Even before reaching lactate threshold, lactate is being produced and used at the same time. The utilization of lactate as a fuel is not an all or nothing process. Even at lower exercise intensities, some lactate is being produced and utilized, but as an intensity increases, the reliance on lactate as a significant energy source becomes more pronounced. Training at different intensities, including both moderate and high intensity exercise, can help enhance the body's ability to utilize lactate as a fuel. This adaptability is often associated with improvements in endurance as well as efficiency of energy metabolism during various exercise intensities. What we talk about at the end of the show today is MCT1. Dr. Stacy Sims is speaking about this as a benefit of zone 2 training and the difference why women may not need as much zone 2 than men because of this difference. MCT1, monocarboxylate transporter 1, is a protein involved in the transport of lactate, a byproduct of anaerobic metabolism into and out of the cells. Lactate is a key component in the regulation of energy metabolism, as we said, during higher intensity exercise, zone 3, 4, and 5. Actually, zone 5 are more creatine phosphate, but you're burning more lactate. So discussing MCT1 transporters in men versus women, as well as the different benefits you might find in zone 2 training, appears to be related to what we're talking about more so for longevity, as Peter Attia discusses, optimizing mitochondrial health, oxidative capacity, and muscle fiber composition. So we have gender differences. As Stacey Sims was talking about, we have perfumes for men and colognes for men, or women perfumes, men have different colognes. We have clothing. Well, this can be different these days because everyone's they, so I can't use this example so much, but she was talking about how there's different things for men and women out there in the stores. Now there's probably people that are non-gender. I won't get into that. So MCT1 transports proteins. So the women may respond differently to exercise intensity as compared to men, maybe due to differences in glycolytic muscles. Glycolytic muscles are involved in short bursts of high-intensity activities and produce lactate as a byproduct. Women, we know, have fewer glycolytic muscles, which may imply that we need more high-intensity work to stimulate lactate production and regulate its clearance. This is likely associated with the need for women to increase MCT1 expression to facilitate transport of lactate or for fuel utilization. Men, if they need to increase MCT1 expression to enhance mitochondrial health, respiratory capacity, and to improve their slow twitch muscle fibers, that's where they might need and benefit from more time in zone 2, as Peter Attia discusses. That's more for men. Slow twitch muscle fibers are more oxidative and rely on more aerobic fat metabolism for fuel source, making them crucial for endurance activities. So there we hear the difference of men, how they need to train versus women as we age. So we have the benefits of zone 2 training we hear about all the time, mitochondrial health. And if you've been around as long as I have, Phil Maffetone taught us this 30 years ago. Phil Maffetone created the max aerobic function heart rate, 180 minus your age, plus or minus 5 beats, and that's where you should train. Or 15 years ago, I did New Leaf metabolic testing, and we found their peak fat burning, where they're burning the most calories, least amount of carbs, and the most amount of fat 15 years ago, and that's what I'm doing now with Pinoe metabolic testing to figure that now, which is called zone 2 training, or long slow distance training, your endurance training, or we used to call it MAF training. So mitochondrial health, zone 2 suggested to beneficial for mitochondrial health. Mitochondria, remember, are your cellular organelles responsible for energy production and maintaining their health. That's essential for overall cellular function. Increasing oxidative capacity. The training may be also aimed at increasing oxidative capacity, which refers to the cell's ability to use oxygen for energy production, which is needed for endurance activities, and that's going to be more fat oxidation. Now, zone 2 training does increase your MCT1 expression. This focuses on increasing, in zone 2, the MCT1 transport proteins, implying an interest in optimizing the transport of lactate into mitochondria for energy use. This aligns with the idea that lactate, when properly regulated, can serve as another valuable fuel source. So men and women may respond differently to exercise intensity due to variations in their glycolytic muscle distribution. We need to emphasize that women and men should have different training schedules at different periods of their life as we age. Especially, we start to see women needing to do more higher intensity work to stimulate lactate production, improve its regulation, than the male athletes need to do more zone 2, but still spend 1 or 2 times in your zone 4 or 5. And ideally, get metabolic testing because, again, we're just guessing and not testing you. So lactate is a fuel. We want the MCT1 transporter to help put the lactate into the mitochondria to be used as fuel. So this underlies the significance of lactate in energy metabolism and potential benefits of optimizing its transport. So super interesting side note, maybe it's just me who likes to geek out and learning more, but the discussion around zone 2 or zone 5, around optimizing your energy metabolism, improving your mitochondrial health, your muscle fiber composition, slow twitch versus fast twitch muscle fibers, to improve the aging process as athletes. We want to look more at what you need to do, see what you have been doing and what maybe you're not doing enough of, which I could guess most of you are not doing the heavy strength training 2-4 times a week because you think you're doing running and biking on hills and swimming in the water with paddles that you think that's enough. But it is not as you're getting older. So we need to restructure your workout program. The emphasis on gender-specific responses reflects the complexity of individualized training approaches based on physiological differences. So learn more on my blog page. I will put that in the show notes, but check out the information, but keep an open mind. If you are reading things, how to exercise for longevity, as Dr. Pia shows, we need to test, not guess. And he's even saying this on this blog about Zone 2 training, effective ways to enjoy and engage in Zone 2, Zone 5, and VO2 max, and primer. How much you need to do of each, that's where we need to test and not guess. So I'm not in his special private group to get this information, but you can see summary of it on exercising for longevity. And there's a ton more videos he's done. So no wonder why he's a main leader here in the Zone 2 talk in social media, because he's got a gazillion videos on YouTube. So go to Dr. Stacy Sims if you are female and curious about what I'm talking about. But Zone 2, again, is relatively easy and long. You should feel like you can go for hours. It's a current recommendation. Do the bulk of your exercise sessions, 3 to 4 training week in Zone 2, but that's for men, not women. As we age, to summarize all this together, Zone 2 is a low enough intensity, Stacy Sims says, to stimulate mitochondria and other adaptations within the muscle cell that improve skeletal muscles' ability to use fat as fuel, spare carbohydrates, and improve metabolic flexibility, which is the ability to switch between fat and carbohydrate oxidation, as well as to better clear lactate during high intensity exercise. So, if that makes more sense, because I recorded this in another podcast, but I think it got confusing when I was talking about the MCT1. And this is the big difference of why one should change how they train, about MCT1 and the MCT4 she talks about in her blog and podcast interviews. These are specific to skeletal and cardiac muscle and the ability to transfer lactate and pyruvate across the cell membrane. So during heavy exercise, the high energy demand of contracting muscles, skeletal muscles, can trigger an increase in glycolysis. This is the breakdown of glucose into pyruvate, and into anaerobic conditions, pyruvate becomes lactate. So we know now, as we've discussed, lactate is not a waste metabolite, as we used to say. It can be pulled into the mitochondria, and this summarizes what I just went over. This is Stacy Sims' blog. Lactate can be pulled into the mitochondria, the skeletal and heart muscles, and to be used as fuel. Exercise researchers are interested in how lactate shuttles across the cell membrane. This is what we're talking about, the MCT1, and there's MCT4 transport proteins that come into play. The MCT4 pulls lactate out of the cells, where MCT1 pulls lactate into the cells as pyruvate, and then it oxidizes into the mitochondria to produce energy for muscle work as lactate. So you think that we should be doing all the work in Zone 2, but as you'll read or listen in the end of the podcast about what Stacy Sims, the sex differences in men versus women. So we need to change how we train if we are not getting the results that we want. So women, stay tuned and listen to the end of the show. Or if you know a female or your training partner is a female, listen in. All right, let's go on. Have you been following along the current popularity of VO2 max marker as a sign of your longevity? And to improve your VO2 max, you need to spend more time in Zone 2. Now, Peter Attia is a big influencer, and this is coming from him. I think a lot of people are listening to Peter Attia on his platform, as well as other leaders as Dr. Rhonda Patrick and Dr. Andrew Huberman. These suggestions are not always designed for what you need as an individual, especially if your past is as an endurance athlete that you're already exercising. 2, if you're a male or a female, and females, it depends on your phase in life. So we've got premenopause, perimenopause, and postmenopause. And even postmenopause, I was just listening to a great podcast I sent all my clients to listen to by Dr. Stacy Sims, that we have early menopause, early postmenopause, and then late postmenopause. So we have different areas of opportunity to improve our performance in our sport and our design for our future selves, for creating our ideal, our optimal, best self when we are older. So how should you train? Do you need zone 2? Do you need all sprint interval trainings? And then to improve muscle health, we'll talk about why, and nutrition, how we need to fuel for those high intensity workouts with a little bit of carb fuel so you can go to zone 5, sprint all out 10 to 30 seconds. If you are doing a low to zero carb, some people may feel a little sluggish and don't have the energy to go all out sprints. And that's why a lot of people in our space are adding in strategic carbohydrates that we've talked about for years, training and fueling appropriately for that specific intensity. Nothing new to most of you, but more reasons females need to train differently with less zone 2 and more sprint interval training and some HIIT, but more focus on the 10 to 30 seconds all out, depending on peri or postmenopause. We need to fuel a little differently because most of us, as we age, become more insulin resistant. And part of that is not getting the glucose into the cell. So we don't have insulin around or ability to get glucose in from insulin because we're more resistant. So instead, we need to fuel around the workout to get that fuel into the cell to help us perform our all-out sprints by timing the source of carbohydrates from nature around the workout to improve performance. So you can work on getting faster and going all out. So we want to focus on activating that GLUT4 transporter, and there's ways to improve your recovery and repair by getting in your right dose of protein. Super fascinating topic there. If you listen to my 3-part series on the perfect amino in search of the perfect protein, but it all depends on you. And I think we continue to hear about the benefits of zone 2 training, just as you hear about the benefits of sauna training or the benefits of doing cold plunge. And instead of jumping on the bandwagon, we need to personalize these different biohacks for longevity and figure out what is best for you if you're a man or a woman, and then women, where are you in your hormone cycle? Because we don't want to do a lot of stressful activities as a cold plunge, as excessive sprint training or HIIT training more so than sprints. That can be adding to our beaker of stress when we are already going through a lot of stress in our lives. And then we have these hidden sources of internal stressors that I reveal when I run functional lab tests on clients. We need to individualize everything. And I am obviously, if you've been listening to the podcast, struggling listening to everyone giving their opinion that everyone should do this fueling program or exercise program. That, again, remember, that's working for that person, and you need to figure out what works best for you. And then we need to look at your sleep schedule, your stressors, your lifestyle, your work schedule, your family life, and figure out that minimal effective dose and frequency of that intensity and what heart rate zone to be in. And then if we did your metabolic test with Pinoy metabolism and breath analysis, we identify at rest You can listen to the other episodes on metabolism testing. We identify your resting metabolism. A lot of people have really slow metabolism, partially because you're not doing strength training. And as we keep talking about, we need to go into heavy strength training 2 to 4 times a week and less chronic cardio. Remember the anabolic versus catabolic. Breaking down is catabolic, anabolic building up. And if we're fasting too much, and if we're not hitting those protein goals because we're focused on this intermittent fasting and 72-hour fasts that we're not getting in our protein because we've been into eating this 8-hour eating window, and it's super challenging to eat that much. And that's why I'm really into taking essential amino acid supplements, because I can't eat as much as I need to hit my protein goals. So we want to look at figuring out what works best for you. And the metabolism testing will identify the resting test, as I just said, if your metabolism is slow, and also your carb to fat burn ratio at rest. If you have signs of insulin resistance, and correlate that data with your blood chemistry panel, looking at a full thyroid panel, and ideally doing a Dutch test and look at your cortisol rhythm throughout the day and other hormones. And then looking at a gut test, looking at your GI map or Genova diagnostics. So ideally we get blood chemistry, a Dutch test, your GI test, and if you can, a wheat zoomer, food sensitivity test. And then we do your metabolism test at rest and during exercise. So the exercise test will identify, do you need to work in more of one zone than another? What are those zones? Some people, I just tested someone, their zone 2 went, I just have it right here, way up to 150 something heart rate. And then another person, their zones were really small and really low in their zone 2 because they were doing so much of the high intensity and not doing the zone 2. So we need to look at what are your zones, what heart rate do you need to be in, and then how much time do you need to spend in them a week. If it's once a week is zone 2, and then the other days you're doing sprints. If you're postmenopausal or peri or postmenopausal, that will be different than if you're later menopausal, postmenopausal. You even need shorter workouts, more frequent sprint interval training. If you listen to Stacy Sims' interview on the Mind Body Green podcast, super fascinating. She did a great summary of what happens different phases. So I'll put all this in my blog post for the show notes today, but I think I would really start looking at you as an individual. What do you need to do to improve your health, starting with muscle health? Now, how do we get enough protein in? How do we get enough resistance training in a week? What is your goal to do this year as we enter in 2024? What do you have going on this year? Focusing on that. But let's start thinking about how we are improving the aging process so we're thriving as we get older, not struggling. Because a lot of you are doing tons of endurance exercise and not spending time in the gym. And I said this before, but I'm going to have Aaron Carson, my friend of FIIT, come on the show. We're going to dive into, do triathletes, athletes, endurance athletes need to add strength training? Do you think you can call your swim workout with paddles and the resistance of your water as a strength workout? Do you think that your hill repeats that you're doing running is helping your strength training, your muscle strength? Does your bike workout when you're doing hilly course, does that count? So I'm a good example of how I can do a good, hard, hilly workout. But when I go do a squat or a deadlift, as I shared, I have some neuromuscular strength issues that are not firing on, well, both sides. But I cannot lift heavy weight in the gym. I cannot deadlift a lot of weight. I cannot squat. I cannot lunge. I cannot do step outs without holding on to something. I have areas of opportunity. That is my priority to fix right now so I can get stronger and go squat and deadlift and get stronger muscularly. And that requires some other treatments before I can get my muscles working. So let's talk about metabolic health first. Metabolic health refers to the overall health of your fitness, which is a set of chemical processes that occur within living organisms to maintain life. A key aspect of metabolic health is the body's ability to efficiently use and store energy from food. When someone is metabolically healthy, their body can regulate blood sugar levels, manage insulin effectively, and maintain the appropriate levels of metabolic markers. Now, what phase of life are you in? As we talked about, as we age, we become more insulin insensitive. So how should we train and fuel to improve our insulin sensitivity? And I think fasting was one solution, but I think exercise is just as important as fasting. And I think we've been fasting too much the last few years and not focusing on exercise to get similar benefits of insulin sensitivity and cell autophagy. Side note, we've got lots of information that you can dive into on my blog, Rabbit Hole blog. Now, when someone is aging, you might need to change this a little bit, but how can we test and improve? Well, not improve, but let's test and not guess if we're metabolically healthy. So we want to look at least once a year. Ideally, we're getting our own labs on Own Your Own Labs or upgraded labs, or doing something to check your blood chemistry panel 2 to 3 times a year. Blood sugar, your glucose, insulin. Let's get your insulin sensitivity measured with insulin or A1C. A combination, there's HOMA-IR calculation you can do. This is a measurement of how effectively your body responds to insulin. This is a hormone that I dove into another podcast and blog on getting muscles stronger, increasing strength. Insulin is a hormone that regulates blood sugar. So insulin resistance is where the cells do not respond properly to insulin. And this is associated with metabolic issues. We know hemoglobin A1C. This is a blood test that provides an average of your blood sugar levels over the past 2 to 3 months. This offers insights into a long-term glucose control. We've got the lipid profile, looking at cholesterol, triglycerides, more importantly, and looking at your HDL, LDL levels. Abnormal lipid levels can indicate metabolic issues, but they also can give us a lot of other clues as with towards low thyroid issues too. So don't think high cholesterol, high LDL, low HDL is a sign of heart disease, but also can give us other information, clues, inflammation, and low thyroid. So waist circumference, you can always do a waist measurement. That's an easy way to track and costs no money. Excess abdominal fat is linked to insulin resistance and metabolic dysfunction. So waist circumference, simple measurement for abdominal obesity marker. Blood pressure, you can get that checked. That can be related to heart disease, stroke, and type 2 diabetes. Inflammatory markers as C-reactive protein and other inflammation markers as triglycerides. The liver health we want to look at too with the AST and ALT and other markers to check on your metabolic processes. So first of all, I wanted to just go over what is metabolic health. This is linked to aging and longevity. So if we're focusing on muscle health for longevity, we want to make sure we have healthy metabolic health. So doing my metabolic testing with PNOE, but also figuring out a personalized program based on data you collect through these blood chemistry markers with your exercise program and nutrition program. So we know we want muscle health, right? Everyone, Dr. Stacey Sims, we've got Dr. Gabrielle Lyon, we've got Dr. Lane Norton, is that his name? Yeah. BioLane. What's his website? BioLane, whatever. He has tons of information on bodybuilding and muscle health and aging. And, Dr. Piatia is talking a lot about this. And so we hear all this information, muscle health. But as endurance athletes, we need to pay attention to adding in the strength training and prioritizing protein. I see a lot of athletes are coming to me for coaching, spending way too much time doing the cardio, and especially women, if you're not getting the desired results, as with your body composition, and if you're gaining weight, even though you're exercising a lot, we need to look at what you're eating and how you're training. So we want to have mobility, good function of our joint health for helping our aging and our performance. We want to test, as with Pinoy, our metabolism. And that, again, I was saying, will tell us if you're slow metabolism, if you don't have enough muscle mass, lean body mass, as muscle mass contributes to healthy metabolism and assists, of course, in weight management because you're burning more calories. Also, we talked about insulin sensitivity. Muscle health is linked to insulin sensitivity. Maintaining healthy muscles can help regulate blood sugar levels, and reducing risk of diabetes, which is what Dr. Gabrielle Lyon talks a lot about in her muscle-centric medicine in her new book, Forever Strong. Now, bone health, we know muscles help support bones, and resistance training can help strengthen our bone density, especially as we age. Women with the lower estrogen, we really need to do the strength training and weight-bearing exercises, and adding the plyometric power training, as Dr. Stacy Sims talks about in her books. Cardiovascular health, we know we're doing that with our endurance training. That's enhancing blood circulation and reducing risk of heart disease. Mental health, we know that exercise can improve BDNF, brain-derived neurofactors, promotes muscle health through the exercise that link to release of endorphins, which of course we know improves our mood, reduces our stress and anxiety. We know that. That's why most of us probably exercise. And longevity, reducing chronic disease. We know that exercise is going to help us, but there's also people in our space that exercise too much, right? As I did when I was starting my adrenal exhaustion journey, I was doing races every month, long distance stuff. And if you've been listening, you know that long distance cardio is more catabolic and causing increase in our cortisol, especially if you're not eating enough. That is another stress, increasing cortisol and not eating enough protein. So we want to look at longevity and quality of life markers. So strong muscles will help all that and reduce chronic pain. And, falling is always said, most important thing to reason to lift weights as you age is to prevent falling. Because if you fall and break your hip, or fall, I know someone that just broke their neck, or their parents did, and someone else's mom fell changing her clothes and tripped on her pant leg or something changing, and all this can impact our longevity. But that's why we want to do strength training. So muscle health and protein synthesis, we talk a lot about that lately. So muscle mass and insulin sensitivity, loss of muscle mass is sarcopenia. We want to look at protein synthesis, which cells build proteins critical for maintaining and repairing muscle tissue. Anabolic resistance. With aging, we get more anabolic resistance. Older individuals may not synthesize proteins as effectively in response to protein intake or resistance exercise. So we need to fight that muscle loss as we age, and insulin insensitivity. As we age, we need to combat that by doing more strength training. That's why we need to, especially women, do that 3 to 5 rep range to help create the muscle strength for muscle health, and to help with their insulin insensitivity get that GLUT4 transporter we'll talk about. So physical activity, insulin sensitivity, we talk about inflammatory factors. We've got the nutrient sensing and insulin signaling. You'll hear about the mTOR pathway. mTOR is a big word the last few years with fasting. As fasting increases the AMPK pathway, so we can improve cell autophagy and get rid of the old and bring in the new. But mTOR pathway is building. So mTOR is involved in muscle protein synthesis and insulin signaling. So proper nutrient sensing through this pathway is crucial for maintaining muscle health and insulin sensitivity. So this is another reason I got down this rabbit hole looking into this, because everyone in the past few years is so focused on keto, eating high fat, forgetting about protein, and focused on fasting and not eating anything and not focusing on the muscle health. And mTOR pathway, if you're in AMPK pathway too much, remember that balance, we've got too much breakdown over building. And if we want to improve aging, I think Rob Wolf said this years ago that we're looking the wrong way. Dr. Gabrielle Lyon, same thing. If you want to improve aging process, stop doing so much fasting and focus on building that muscle up with eating protein and resistance training, as what Dr. Stacy Sims is saying. So we have this insulin signaling cascade. It's an anabolic processes stimulated by insulin. So insulin's not bad. If it's imbalanced like cortisol, cholesterol is not a bad thing. So muscle protein synthesis, we need some insulin. This is important in maintaining muscle mass and insulin sensitivity. So improving and maintaining good quality muscle health as we age, we need to have muscle protein synthesis via the resistance training to help combat age-related insulin resistance. We need to focus on increasing muscle mass, improving protein synthesis, and reducing inflammation to help have more positive changes as we age. So we want that metabolic health, and that starts with, I think, muscle health. So then there's women, as we get older, our estrogen and progesterone levels are lower, and so we'll have changes in body composition, strength, and speed, and we'll go into that another time. Muscle health and insulin sensitivity is changing because estrogen plays a role in maintaining muscle mass and function. So as a female ages and has these lower hormonal changes, we may have a decline in muscle mass if we don't do something about it. We have a reduced glucose uptake by the cells in the muscles, and we have this insulin resistance. So we need to change how we feel and train. And also, we talk about the effects on the beta cell. The beta cells are in the pancreas, and we have these beta cells where insulin is produced. So estrogen has a protective effect on the pancreatic beta cells, which are responsible for insulin production. So a decline in estrogen levels may impact the function of these cells, leading to reduced insulin secretion and impaired glucose regulation. So this is why women, we need to change how we fuel and train to get this reversed. And then progesterone, ladies, we have progesterone and estrogen get lower, but progesterone and estrogen interact with each other and have independent effects on insulin sensitivity. So we have some information on that. You'll hear more too from Dr. Mindy Pelz about estrogen and progesterone during the cycle. So we have individual variations. We have different genetics, different lifestyle behaviors, and we need to look at what you're eating, how you're training, and what supplements you're taking, when and why, and how are you doing everything. So we want to activate the GLUT4 transporter because this is a protein that plays a role in facilitating the uptake of glucose into the cells. So we need exercise to help stimulate that transporter so we can shuttle the glucose from the bloodstream into the cells to be used as fuel. So GLUT4 is insulin sensitive, meaning its activity is regulated by insulin. Under certain conditions, such as during exercise, GLUT4 can facilitate glucose uptake into muscle cells independently of insulin, helping to provide energy for ATP production. So that's why we want to fuel with some carbohydrates. Nature's carbs is half a banana or some berries right before your workout if you're doing a sprint, interval, or HIIT training workout. So super fascinating rabbit hole I went down onto GLUT4 and how it works and operates without insulin. If you are insulin resistant, as we are when we age, especially women, we need to look at this. So you can check that out on the blog post here. Then also I looked up what are some animal protein sources to get that 40-50 grams of protein each meal to hit at least 100 grams of protein a day. If we go by Dr. Lyon, it's 1 gram of protein per ideal body weight, at least 100 grams, or you can go 0.7 grams to 1.0 grams of protein per ideal body weight, 30 to 50 grams. Dr. Stacy Sims said women that are older, we need to even hit 40 grams post-workout. So you want to get post-workout and getting in your protein dose beginning first meal and last meal of the day. But what is 40 to 50 grams? So you can look that up and on my blog here. Chicken breast, 8 ounces, 48 grams. Does it have the right leucine? Remember, we need 2.5 to 3 grams of leucine to get that protein, muscle protein synthesis. So we have turkey breast, 8 ounces, 48 grams. Salmon, 8 ounces, 46 grams. Tuna, 8 ounces, 40 grams. Beef, get a lean sirloin steak, 8 ounces, 48 grams. Pork tenderloin, 8 ounces, 48 grams. Eggs, you need 4 of them to get 32 grams. Greek yogurt, 1 cup is only 20 grams. So you need 2 cups of yogurt. That's why dairy and the plant-based stuff doesn't really work unless you're going to eat so much food to get that dose. So it doesn't work. So that's why I listened to my interview on the perfect protein, looking at supplementing with something as Body Health's perfect aminos. And I've been doing that lately, trying to see if that helps my body recomposition as I'm wanting to get leaner than I am. And I'm doing the strength training and I'm shifting my focus to sprint interval training. For example, yesterday, instead of doing an hour run with some intervals, longer ones, I did run to the set of stairs. I did 5 times stair repeats that go down to the beach and come up. There was like 45 to 50 seconds up, and I did that 5 times. Walking back down was a minute something recovery. So remember, going up to zone 5, down to zone 1, and I did 5 sets, and then I ran, I don't know, it's like 3/4 a mile to another set of stairs at the beach, and went down and up those 5 times, and that was like 40 something seconds too. And then I ran back to Fletcher's Cove, and I did 5 to 8 times up the ramp there that goes down to the beach, and that was a 20-second sprint. And I did some step-ups on the curb at the beach and cooled down. I did some little baby box jumps because I only can jump so high. So that's how I'm changing how I train. The other workout I did this week was lifting weights at the gym. Then I went on the treadmill and I figured out my speed. Going to do a 20-30 second sprint to get my heart rate up was like 9.0 to 9.5 on the treadmill, and doing like a 6 something. So that doesn't even matter what speed I did it, but just getting your heart rate up and then recovering down. I just jumped on the side rails and stood there. And I did that for, say, 5 minutes. So I did 4 or 5 of them, and then I would come back and do it again. So we need to change how we train, men and women, and figure out how to get protein. So you can look at my list here. I added seafood and eggs, how much salmon, tuna, shrimp, cod, sardines, halibut, mackerel, crab, lobster, scallops and bacon we're going to have the other day. So find there's other ways to get your nutrition. So get the protein goals post-workout, as I'm just going to go to master swimming now and do my intervals in the pool. I can't go eat heavy protein, but when I come home, I'm having smashed burgers. So we're going to have a burger patty with an egg on top and some avocado smashed on top of it. And that will be my mid-afternoon meal. I'm usually not hungry after that, but that's part of my area of opportunity, is have some perfect aminos later so I can get that protein goal or a little snack. But you have to meal prep and have a lot of stuff frozen in your freezer so you can pull it out and have it defrosted so you're ready to do your meal prep that day or a day ahead, and have maybe some hard-boiled eggs if you can do eggs. But a lot of people do too many eggs, I think, have food sensitivity after a while. So those are some thoughts, how to train, how to fuel. Hopefully you are doing something different and have a new plan starting in January. So let me know your questions, comments, or if you'd like a discovery call, schedule a free call with me on the website, debbiepotts.net.
Hey, my fellow aging endurance athletes, just a reminder, if you like what you listened to today, make sure to share this episode with your community. Head to debbiepotts.net to set up a free discovery call to learn more about my personalized coaching programs, especially if you are on a mission as myself to improve the aging process and start training to be my best self when I am 80, 90 years old. So I am on a mission to live my best life and be my best self the second half of my life. So if you're on the same mission as me, head over to my website and YouTube channel to learn more ways to improve the whole you from the inside out with the Holistic Method.
Okay, if you wanted to learn more, head to drstacysims.com blog on what women need to do instead of Zone 2. But here's a summary of an interview she just had on Mind Body Green that I thought was really interesting. So let's dive in. She talks about what women should do pre-menopause, perimenopause, and then post-menopause. Women, pre-menopause, we have changes in estrogen and progesterone impacting all the systems in the body. We see microbiome changes, recovery changes, body composition, obviously, brain neurotransmitters, and sleep architecture. Now, we have these hormones changing. So what she keeps talking about is we need to find an external stress that is going to help us create an adaptation the way estrogen and progesterone did for us. What the hormones, estrogen and progesterone did for us, many different purposes in the body. Now, without them, the same amount, we need to find a different source of stress to create some of the work that estrogen and progesterone did. So we look at high intensity training and heavy lifting. We drop the volume. We want to make sure we have adequate recovery. We want to create a stress to stimulate growth hormone. We want to see these epigenetic changes in the muscle to help with our blood glucose control and glucose homeostasis, because we are more insulin resistant as we age, men and women, but women especially as we lose estrogen and progesterone. Now, we also want to signal the central nervous system to help us maintain power, speed, and lean mass. Those are what I keep talking about that I'm losing, and noticed a difference last 2 years since I turned 50. I was feeling amazing at 50, and then it's just last 2 years, things are changing. I don't look the way I want to look. I don't feel the way I want to feel physically in my workouts, and the strength is harder to get. So I need to not just lift heavy weights, not just do sprint workouts once a week, but sprint workouts in my weekday workouts. So instead of going, as I said, an hour run, I am doing a run with stair repeats or incline, slightly uphill, slightly downhill running, 20 seconds all out or flat. And I'm trying to do that more often than just trying to get 5 miles in. Doesn't work anymore, right? So what you were doing, you might agree, is not giving you the same results. So we need to change how we fuel and train so we can perform our best, okay? So if you are post-menopause, Stacy Sims, Dr. Sims talks about early menopause is 5 to 6 years after menopause, which remember is 1 day in time. It's just some rule that someone claimed is menopause after not having a period for 12 months straight. And then you're in menopause, and that's 1 day, okay? Next day, you're in post-menopause. So as we go through menopause, we want to continue to lift heavy, to do sprint interval training 2 to 3 times a week. Limit or decrease the high volume, low intensity zone 2 workouts. Less is more. You're going to get more results. As I said, you're not going to see the changes you want to see by doing zone 2 4 or 5 days a week. And you'll notice when we do your metabolic testing every 3 months, if you want to come to San Diego, you or Kona, I'm going to Kona to test, you might not improve as much. And then we talk about late menopause. Dr. Stacy Sims, 6 years after that one day in time, you'll be in late menopause. Now you really don't have those estrogen receptors anymore. You've lost sensitivity to estrogen and progesterone without the receptors around for that long a time. So you don't respond as well to the high intensity work. So now, this next phase, now that you passed menopause, early menopause, now you're into late menopause. Now, that sprint interval training needs to not just do 2-3 times a week. Now we're doing sprint interval training 4 days a week, but less of it. So instead of doing 2 to 3 times a week that you're doing, say, 20 minutes of intervals plus warm up and warm down, now you want to do 4 days of just 15-minute intervals. So maybe a short warm up and maybe you're just doing 5 minutes of a Tabata type of workout, or I'm not a fan of Tabatas anymore. If you're trying to go all out 20 seconds, you need more recovery down to zone 1 if we do it properly. So as you're in 6 years post-menopause and on, you've lost sensitivity, so you need to work harder, as you already know, to keep your lean body mass. You have to keep your blood pressure in check, vascular health, bone strength, cognition, and proprioception. So to do that, to keep those benefits, to avoid the common stereotypes of aging, we need to do more sprint interval training, but a shorter dose. So we want this more consistent, regular short doses of sprint interval training. And don't forget those heavy weights. If you've been working out a while, 3 to 5 reps, no more than 6. If you're new to working out, start with that typical 10 to 12, 15 repetitions and build up to 8 to 12, and then we get into the heavy weights. Okay, so don't start with heavy weights. Build your base. Remember your house, build the foundation first, and you just don't start putting up the bricks or the planks of wood. You have to get the ingredients, and that's going to be with your protein intake. So you need to work out correctly, build up that foundation, then start getting heavier, and then you need the building blocks, the parts, and that's going to be eating your protein. So 4 to 20 second sprints instead of 10, focusing on the high end zone 5 workout, right? When you work out. So that zone 5 all out and down to zone 1. Just typing that in. Now, sprint interval trainings are popular. You'll hear a lot of people talking. Zone 2 is Peter Attia. It's all about zone 2. And then you'll hear other people, as my friend Brad Kearns talks about the sprint interval training. So why? Which one do you need? That's why we need to test and work individually, because you're just guessing that, oh, Peter Attia says research shows I need to do zone 2 training. Well, as I said, women at different ages don't need as much sprint or zone 2. We need more sprint training. And then for us endurance athletes who, like me, started doing endurance events when I was 25 years old, did my first Ironman when I was 29. Well, that was a long time ago. I'm 52 somehow now. And I already know how to do zone 2 because of my 30 years of training. Also, I already know how to do zone 2 because I am born a female and I already have a large amount of slow twitch muscle fibers. I already oxidize fat better. So what Dr. Stacy Sims says, women don't need all the zone 2. The research they're sharing about the zone 2 and improving your VO2 max is great for men. The studies, again, are based on men. So we want to look on studies done on women. So women, we know, have less fast twitch muscle fibers than men. Women, we have obviously more slow twitch, as I said. We are born with greater mitochondrial density, mitochondrial respiration, and greater sensitivity to metabolites that inhibit free fatty acids that come into the cell, the muscle cell. So women are already good at the benefits that you get from zone 2. What we do need, as we already said, we have more slow twitch muscle fibers. And as we age, what happens? We get slower. So we, as myself, I want to get stronger and faster and more powerful. So by doing zone 2, that's just going to make me slower. Benefits of zone 2, yes. Dr. Stacy Sims goes over in this podcast she gave. Mitochondrial health. The training in zone 2 increases oxidative capacity. It increases mitochondrial health. It increases the number of the MCT1 transport proteins. These proteins take out lactate out of circulation and then put them into the mitochondria to get the lactate to be used as fuel, right? So we want to look that men do need this benefit. Men do need to increase MCT1 to increase their mitochondrial health, to increase the mitochondrial respiratory capacity and slow twitch muscle fibers. We already have that. We can put the lactate fuel into circulation and recycle it and use it as fuel. Men don't have the same response as women. So the difference between the two sexes, she talks about in many of her interviews, in her books. The difference between the exercise intensity. Women need to do more higher intensity work as we have less glycolytic muscles. We need to stimulate lactate production and regulate the ability to clear it. We don't need as much zone 2 as men. Men get the benefits from zone 2. Women, we might feel that we get slower. So if you're not improving, female athletes, as you age, doing your high volume zone 2 workouts, stop, push pause, and let's look at your training program. Reflect on what results you're getting now. What are your struggles? What are your areas of opportunity? Let's identify your limiters. What's holding you back from being your best? And let's work on those factors. If you feel stuck, being slow, being puffy, feeling just off your game, we need to make some adjustments and course correct. Men, you guys, stick with the zone 2. Maybe do sprint workouts twice a week. Where women, we need to do more the sprint and less zone 2. So maybe my workouts for me as a female, zone 2 on the weekends, weekdays, I'm doing more heavy weights, finished with some sprint interval training. Whereas today I did the sprint interval training in between my weights. So women, we already up-regulate more of that MCT1 transporter. Men are the ones that need more of it. So women versus men. I always look at what the research is talking about, what the study was done on. So if you'd like to learn more, I put everything in my blog post, and I'll put the link in the show notes. You can go look at Peter Attia's website, peterattiamd.com, under aerobic zone 2 training. It's talking about this is his third of his 4 pillars, which I need to read his book, Framework for Exercise, Aerobic Exercise Zone 2. Zone 2 is defined as the highest metabolic output work that you can sustain while keeping your lactate level below 2 millimole per liter. Peter Attia on Zone 2 and Zone 5 training. He's got Ask Me Anything podcast, Strategy for Longevity. He's got the Centenarian Decathlon. He's talking about the Zone 2, VO2 max, and more. So I fortunately get to test people and figure out this VO2 max. There's what they need to do. And I actually have some clients of Peter Attia's that I'm testing this next month. So it'll be interesting. See if we can get connected with Peter Attia. But lots of information on the Zone 2 I need to dive into. How to incorporate high-intensity training Zone 5 to increase your VO2 max. So he does talk about that. But we have to break it down. This is not a one-size-fits-all. How much time you need to spend in each. There's a research Peter has and what he's talking about, but he might not be breaking it up per gender and then breaking it down for the female at what phase they are in their hormone cycle, peri, postmenopausal, premenopausal, and then if you have a cycle, females, make sure we test it in your follicular phase. Dr. Stacy Sims did tell me that. So we want to look at your VO2 max, but we also want to figure out how you should train. And a lot of these examples, again, are in men. So don't compare yourself to each other. Let's compare our own data and make sure we improve it the next time. So lots to dive into on Peter's website. Dr. Stacy Sims' blog, she did that 2-part blog. I talked about what women need to do instead of zone 2. And then she has the one before that, what's wrong with zone 2. So just 2 people saying the benefits, but one's going into it women versus men. And then Peter's just talking about in general for longevity. So hopefully that helps clear up some information. But remember, it's how you train is one part of the puzzle. We need to look at your stress, your sleep optimization, your nutrition, hitting those protein goals, which is always an ongoing experiment and figuring out how to get that protein in, unless you want to just have steak 3 times a day. It's meal prepping and it's planning ahead and having grocery shopping, go to Costco, get that grass-fed meat when you can and wild-caught fish and getting the free-range chicken, having tuna maybe once a month. I always want to watch that mercury because I've tested hair tissue mineral analysis on clients and their mercury levels will be high. So if you have any questions or want me to dive in more, let me know because I am on a mission. This article I'll share, I put in information on the role of estrogen and progesterone for females, talking about GLUT4, how that works, if you want to dive into that, how if we are insulin resistant, how the timing your carbohydrate around your workout, before workout, can help improve performance without the need of insulin. So GLUT4 in the muscle cells, that's really important because the muscle glucose uptake is a high demand for glucose as fuel source into ATP for energy when you're doing this high intensity sprint training. GLUT4 is abundant in muscle tissue and its activation is essential for efficient glucose uptake into the cells. So you don't want to eat your carbohydrates when you're insulin insensitive unless it's around your workout. Okay, so you have to earn your carbs. We can't do as many carbs. I never could anyways, but have them around your workout before you work out. And then after sometimes, but I focus on protein post-workout. So lots of geeking out to do. Making sure you hit that 40 to 50 grams of protein each meal. Again, looking at 8 to 10 ounces of meat. And if you don't do meat, if you do seafood or eggs, you have to do a lot of eggs. So seafood, sardines, cod, shrimp, tuna, as I said, 8 ounces is 50 grams. So I put on here, I looked it up, protein and leucine and the calories and the serving size. So you can look on that chart. And then the info from Stacy Sims. So I think that's it for today. I love diving into this stuff, guys. It's so fun. So let me know what other questions you have. Send me a message. Have a great day.
Thanks for listening to the Low Carb Athlete Podcast. If you have any questions, feedback, or topic suggestions, let us know on Facebook or at debbiepotts.net. You can help us continue and grow by leaving a review on iTunes. Thanks again, and see you next time.